Okay, let me get totally settled here. Okay, so we thought that it would be helpful for you to understand how you and your PTA fit in a bigger picture today. Some of you are probably really new to being PTA officers. Maybe you have never been active in a PTA before. Maybe you've been in a school that had a different parent organization. We have lots of different things across the city, right? Like parent clubs, parent teacher organizations. I've heard lots of different names. So you may not be familiar. And even if you are, you still may not know necessarily, even if you have a PTA at your school, you may not be very familiar with the PTA organization in general. So this very short presentation is going to give you a sense of the PTA structure, give you a little bit of history about the organization, and also help you understand the purposes and the mission of PTA and kind of the basics about what kind of an organization it is. Okay, so the National PTA is the oldest and largest volunteer association working exclusively on behalf of all children and youth. For more than 100 years, the National PTA has promoted education, health, and safety of children, youth, and families. Phoebe Apperson-Hurst and Allison McClellan Burney were really concerned about the nation's children, and the US was feeling a lot of impact of the Industrial Revolution. There was an immense wave of immigration flowing into the country. Children were working in factories and mines and in the streets of cities, and some couldn't attend school or even have enough food to eat. I know that doesn't sound too unfamiliar, unfortunately, with food insecurity even now. So they wondered what could be done. So in 1897, they held their first meeting. They did a lot of grassroots organizing in different parts of the country. So these women met, and through diligent efforts, they planned a meeting to bring their ideas to others. And so on February 17th, which is our Founders Day, in 1897, they held this meeting, and more than 2,000 men and women surprised them by filling the hall in Washington, D.C. And they formed the National Congress of Mothers. So the movement grew here in California. Here in San Francisco in 1897, the California Home and School Child Study Association was formed. And so we just have this long history. This other woman who is here in the picture that you see on the slide is Selena Sloan Butler. She was a dedicated community leader and teacher working in Atlanta, Georgia, to unify parents and teachers for the advancement of child welfare and education. She not only founded her school's parent-teacher association, but also the Georgia Parent-Teacher Association, and in 1926, the National Congress of Colored Parents and Teachers. So after that initial address that I mentioned before in 1897, Alice Burney told the crowd, "It is my privilege to extend to each and all of you a heartfelt welcome and to express the hope that this large and gratifying audience, this more than encouraging response to our universal call, may prove in earnest of the success destined to crown the work to which our best and highest efforts are now consecrated." She had appealed to all mankind and to all womankind, regardless of race, color, or condition, to recognize that the Republic's greatest work is to save the children. But in many states, there were segregated schools that were legally sanctioned, and to address those students' special needs, Selena Sloan Butler founded the National Congress of Colored Parents and Teachers, and these, as I mentioned earlier, and then these two PTAs formally merged in 1970. So PTA is a national organization. The National PTA is composed of 54 state congresses, and there's more than 20,000 local units in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and the Department of Defense schools in Europe. The state PTAs are a liaison between the local and the national PTA, helping each to function effectively and so we can support and sustain each other. The California State PTA is broken down into 27 geographical districts. They're not the same as school districts. There's like 1,000 school districts in California, but there's just 27 PTA districts. And then Second District PTA is one of those. And most other districts also have something called councils that come in between districts and units. And I'm using PTA and PTSA interchangeably. They're the same thing, but sometimes we formally have students involved and have leadership positions. So most of our middle and high schools in San Francisco are PTSAs. We have about 62 unit PTAs in second district. So if we have about 120-ish schools in San Francisco Unified, a little over half of them have official formal PTAs that are part of this organization. So the unit is what you all have at your own school. So if you hear us say PTA unit, that's what we mean, is the PTA that you have at your own school. Um, so this is a map you can see of all of the PTA districts across the state of California. They have numbers next to them. You can see ours is very tiny. We are a very small geographical district. We are in, okay size districts. Some of the district PTAs have up to 100,000 members in them. They can be very large. So ours is a bit on the smaller side. And of course, here in San Francisco, we think we're so special because we're a county and a city and a school district and a PTA district. We are the only locality that is formed that way here. Okay, so the mission of the PTA is to positively impact the lives of all children and families. The state PTA here in California connects families, schools, and communities. We're part of the foundation of a public education system, and we have been a trusted messenger to millions of members, parents, families, and educators, and other partner agencies all across the state. We believe that every adult has a responsibility to ensure that all children develop to their full potential. We believe parents are children's first teachers and that parent involvement is essential throughout a child's educational experience. We believe that family is a basic unit of society responsible for the support and nurturing of all children, and we recognize that the family might be defined in many different ways. We believe our responsibility includes advocating for the safety and welfare of all children and the opportunity for a quality public education for each and every child. Okay, so this is a list. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but these are the stated purposes of the PTA. You can find these on the state PTA website. That's, if you haven't been there yet, it's capta.org. There's lots of resources there. I think probably one or two of these tend to resonate more with some others. So you can take a look at this. And I'll share these, we'll share all these slides later along with the recordings. I wanted to share this list of just a few of the things that the California State PTA has done in its tenure. You can see these are the resolutions that have passed by a vote of the membership of the state. And so we have had, I don't know what the exact number of members across the state of California is now, but most recently, I think last year, it was close to 800,000. So it's a lot of PTA members across the state. So PTA resolutions are passed at convention every year. So you can see just some of the topics that we have here in San Francisco. PTA helped get those yellow crosswalks in front of schools for safety. The state PTA was also responsible for seatbelt laws. At the national level, the hot lunch programs in schools, the PTA is responsible for that. So there's a long, long history of advocacy in the PTA. The mission of the second district of the California State PTA is to advocate for, cultivate, and empower individual units, that's you, in San Francisco to improve the education, health, and well-being of children and families. This is a list of the goals that we have at the second district PTA, and I'm sure that we're going to revisit these as we enter a new term. These have been longtime goals. A big core of that is supporting you all to building a strong foundation of sustained leadership. So we're training you, helping you at your own schools to strengthen your schools. And sustained leadership meaning we don't want to have just 1 year of some great folks in charge and then all of a sudden there's nothing the next year. So we're hoping that there is sustained leadership at your schools and to support you through that. We want to help facilitate better partnering, communication, and collaboration between us at the district level, between parents and educators and everybody who works with our schools, but also to help you do that at your own school sites. And this third goal is one that we added just this past year. We'll talk about this a little bit later today. And that is that we will advocate for policies, programs, and practices in our schools and community that are anti-racist, equitable, and inclusive for the well-being of our children and to sustain a foundation for inclusive school communities. We want to increase effective parent engagement across San Francisco and celebrate a culture of achievement by recognizing students who are overcoming challenges, educating parents and students about benchmarks that are needed for their students' success, and involving the whole community in the educational success of our children. Okay. Bring it back to personal, why we all do this. These are my kids. This is a while ago. They're now all big. I have two kids in college, a freshman and a junior in college, and I have a junior in high school here in the city in San Francisco, Unified. So these are a few years old. They're a little tinier. I imagine my story has similarities to yours. My kids started in kindergarten here in SFUSD. I was first a room parent, and then I offered to run and revamp the carnival that we did in the fall, and got involved that way. And then I became the president of our PTA when my oldest was in second grade in 2007. And this was right during the beginning of budget cuts that we saw across the state when we had the recession that hit. So when I started doing that, I found out that there was a district PTA. I had no idea that the PTA was a big organization with all the supports that it has. You could say that our school was a bit in emergency mode. I was doing triage as president all the time. The board before I came in had maybe one board meeting per year. They hadn't updated their bylaws in many years. There were about 3 or 4 people who were doing pretty much everything in the school, 3 or 4 active parents. This might sound like your board or something recently at your own school. So we're all in different stages in our work, and we just start where we are, we do our best, and we just build it as we go and try to invite more people to be part of this work. So at that point, I received an email from the district PTA, was on their list about a training that was coming up, so I went. I found out that there was a state convention happening that year in San Jose. So I went for a day or two to check it out, and that was so eye-opening. All of a sudden, I felt much less lost. I didn't feel alone because there were literally thousands of people there who were all there for the same reason, to learn how they could do their jobs better, to support the kids at their school. So, but anyway, back to budget cuts. I didn't know a lot about how to advocate for legislation at that point. The idea of talking to lawmakers, decision makers, was a bit intimidating to me. And then the state PTA started this Flunk the Budget campaign. You see an image here on the left, in 2008. And if you'll remember, that was the highest year of funding that California schools have had since then. Well, now we're finally getting back up there. But that was the highest level because then we started to see all these cuts. And so when those cuts were proposed, we ran the state PTA ran this big campaign. I knew that my role as a PTA leader was to get information out to our members, ask them to call our elected representatives. We wrote a letter, we translated it into 5 languages that were the main 5 languages spoken at our school, and we sent it out to parents asking them to make calls to their legislators. And then we designed these postcards you see here on the right. And we had every single kid in the entire school fill one out in their classroom. They say, I love my school because, so every teacher had every kid do 4 postcards. They were amazing. They were super powerful. And we sent these massive packets of postcards to, at that time, San Francisco had 4 state legislators, 2 assembly people and 2 senators. And so we sent these to every single state rep. This was one of the ones that I photocopied. I don't know, probably 20 of them that were just amazing. If you can't read this one, it says, this boy named Oliver said, I get to do a thing called, or I love my school because I get to do a thing called art. The art teacher's name is Miss Marissa. We also love our school because we have a big garden and we're making it look like heaven. So I was hooked. I knew that this advocacy thing was pretty important. I heard Carol Kosovar, who is a past state PTA president, but also was here in San Francisco. You all probably know her if you've been around PTA at all. Said that the best fundraiser we could ever have was to pass a good piece of legislation. And then another one of our longtime PTA members, the district level Shelley Weiner, was on the nominating committee that year for the district PTA. and called me and said, hey, you seem to be into this advocacy thing. You should be our legislation chair for the district. I didn't even know that that position existed. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I would need to do, but I said yes. Crazy. I probably should learn to say no a little more often, but the rest is history, because advocacy is my passion, especially this legislative advocacy. And so it's been one of my favorite things about being in PTA is helping people find their way through that and to learn to recognize that they already are advocates for their own children, but they also can advocate with others for the things that we need for our schools to be better. I love showing parents how they can use their own voices. So, why are you here? What brings you to this room today, this Zoom room? Either maybe you're the president, maybe you're in a different role. Just think about why you're here. Maybe you shared it with your groups. If you haven't or would like to share, go ahead and put it in the chat. But it's really great, especially when you have your hard moments, which you will. At your PTAs, there's always something that happens that is difficult. It's good to remember why you were doing this to begin with. It's really easy to focus on our own child. We're here where they're with their parents or their caregivers, if you're maybe not the parent, but you are taking care of a child. And it's easy to focus only on their needs. But there have to be some people who are also looking at the bigger picture, looking out for all of our children. And that is something we can do together through the PTA. This picture on the right, I just have, it just reminds me of the, rising tide lifts all boats. As you're supporting other leaders in your school, supporting teachers and students, you create this great cycle where everybody gets more of what they need and our schools all become better. And I know that that's a large reason why you all are here today. Okay, a few more basics about PTA. It is an inclusive organization. It is non-commercial, non-sectarian, and non-partisan. So I'll let you know what some of these mean if you don't know. Non-commercial means that we don't promote the goods or services of any other organization. So you should apply this policy with good judgment, discretion, and common sense, recognizing it's not meant to prohibit contact or cooperation with different groups. We don't say, this is an example, we don't say, go buy pizza at Paul's Pizza, he's the best, and since he gives us money, we should buy his products. Instead, you can say, with our non-commercial policy, Paul's Pizza is offering 10% off of each purchase made this week to go back to our school, period. Not qualifying it, say, go support them, we love them, they're the best. Just they are offering this, you can do it if you like. Non-sectarian means we welcome membership representing a diversity of cultures, ethnic backgrounds, political and religious beliefs. Differences are irrelevant to qualification for membership in the PTA. We should strive to make our PTAs hospitable to everybody and support no one, no religion over another, no people over another. As a private association, we're permitted to have inspirational messages, such as what Albert just did early at the beginning of this meeting, but these messages should be inspirational, not sectarian, recognizing that not all of our members hold the same beliefs. PTA is nonpartisan. We don't support candidates for office. Even if it's a nonpartisan office like school board, PTA cannot endorse or support. We do take positions on issues affecting children and youth, which is one of the central tenets and something I was just referring to in all the advocacy work we do. So we should educate our members and encourage them to vote and be civically engaged. And also, one thing you might want to know is that as a nonprofit, no more than an insubstantial part of our resources and activities should go towards influencing legislation. It is not likely that your PTAs will be spending more than that, be spending a substantial part of your time and resources around that. But if you have any questions, let us know and we can help you navigate that. These are the main areas for PTA, the main focus areas. Students and school success. We believe that all students should receive a world-class education that prepares them for long-term success in college and careers. The PTA has programs like Take Your Family to School Week, Family Reading Experience, Schools of Excellence, that are empowering families to be engaged in their children's education and support their learning, which makes a difference for student success and school improvement. Health and safety. Of course, we want every child to have a healthy and safe place to live, learn, and thrive in their communities. So we provide the PTA, you can look on the state PTA, capta.org, and also just pta.org, the national organization, and see a lot of tools and resources that can help our students, parents, and schools work together to create positive school climates. Arts and culture, we believe that every child should receive a well-rounded education with access to arts and cultural opportunities. And we want to celebrate and raise awareness about the importance of arts education. That's one of the first things to go when there are budget cuts, right? We're so fortunate here in San Francisco that we have voter approved funds to support more arts in our schools. So all of our students have access to at least some arts. But that is something that is a strong priority for the PTA. You may have heard of our Reflections program, which you'll hear about not more today, but in the future. And that's an opportunity for students to create artwork around a theme every year. And then advocacy, we just talked about that. We want all families to be at the table and to be empowered to advocate for their own child and for every child in their school and beyond their school. Some people ask, why do PTA? Why not a PTO? Why not parent club? Whatever the other options might be. Some of the benefits of being part of the PTA is that we provide guidance and resources and training like what we're doing today. We provide some structure and accountability to members and of your PTA and to the school. You have an opportunity to network with other folks across other schools. If you aren't part of a PTA, you can still do that. It's just a little bit more challenging to make that work, to make all those connections. We have a natural structure set up here. So we also have insurance through the state PTA that covers officers and PTA activities. We have this advocacy culture I just mentioned. And this is also an independent nonprofit. It's a legal entity. Each one of you have an EIN, which allows you to, when people make donations to your PTA, they have, the tax benefit from that. And so that's an added bonus too when you're trying to do any kind of fundraising. One of the things that most people are often attracted to about the PTA is the idea that the members make decisions together. It's not just a couple of people in a room deciding how everything goes, or at least it shouldn't be that way. It does happen sometimes, but that's most often when leaders haven't been trained in how to run the organization. The actual design of the PTA is meant to be inclusive. Not having a central core of power in one place, but that the members are together making decisions. Even you on your executive boards are making recommendations, not decisions. You bring those recommendations to your membership who then have to vote. That happens with your budget, anything, your calendar, anything that you're doing, the members vote on that. To remain in good standing, every PTA needs to have at least 15 members. Many of you have many more than that. And when a new PTA is formed, they need at least 15 members. There are membership dues that every PTA pays. There's $475 that leaves your unit. So whatever price you are, not price, but whatever membership due you have at your unit, you can find in your bylaws. And you'll hear more about that a little later. But those dues go up to, a little bit comes to us, and then the rest goes to the state and the national PTA, and it funds all of those programs and resources that your PTA can benefit from, that you can learn more about on those sites. And every PTA needs to have at least 3 elected officers: president, treasurer, and secretary. We know that lots of folks are having some struggles this year with this distance learning most of the year for most students. And so some of that is a little bit is not going quite as normally you might like to in an ideal world, but we can help you work through that too. Don't worry, there is flexibility here, but you do, if you can get a president, treasurer, and secretary before the end of the year, great. You definitely want to have somebody who the state PTA can, and we can connect with by the time the next term starts on July 1st. And if you're struggling with any of this, just reach out, because we're helping lots of units with this right now. Okay, we're just about finished here. The Want to let you know about ways you can partner with SFUSD. There's a family partnership and empowerment team. The website is here. They have, PTA was actually part of helping to develop family engagement standards for SFUSD several years ago. The standards are actually based on the standards developed by the national PTA, but they're just tailored for our district. They want to build authentic relationships, link student learning between home and school, create an inclusive and equitable school community, sharing power and speaking up for every student, and supporting families to navigate SFUSD and access resources. You can also find the school district's core beliefs about family partnerships and their best practices on that website. There's also parent advisory councils in the district. Some of you here are members of those. We have the Community Advisory Committee for Special Education. There's the African American Parent Advisory Committee. There's the District English Learner Advisory Committee. There's a lot of different things there. And then of course, at your own school site, there's a school site council to make decisions for your own school. So there's a lot of other ways that parents can be involved and the PTA can be involved with the school and the district. And then the last thing is that your PTA at your school, you want to work on these kinds of things. You want to build relationships of trust with everyone, just the parents, but also the educators, people who are on staff at your school, and your principal. Means transparency, talking regularly with each other. You want to work on some shared goals. If you haven't established goals yet, go ahead and work on that this summer or the beginning of next year. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Albert will. You want to meet and communicate with your principal regularly, set up a regular rhythm and cadence for that. You want to be inclusive as you can. Again, we'll talk about that a little later. And overall, stay focused on the students. They are what we are here for. This is why we do what we do, is that we believe that we have a purpose to help them have access to all the opportunities that they deserve. And we need to make sure that that is equitable as possible. And that's why we are here. So that is it from me. I am going to stop sharing this. And then I am going to, I'll see if there are questions here in the chat. Hopefully they've been answered if there are. And I'm going to pass the time over to Melissa, who's going to talk about bylaws.